Hello and a very warm welcome to the late-breaking F1 podcast presented by Harry Eade, Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking, today reviewing the Spanish Grand Prix, a race won by Max Verstappen with Lando Norris chasing him down at the end, finishing in second place, and Lewis Hamilton claiming his first podium of the season. 3 different teams on the podium again, Sam.
3 different teams on the podium. Lewis Hamilton's 18th consecutive year of scoring a podium in Formula One. We had some good battles, some spicy moments. It had some good parts, this Grand Prix. Not an absolute all-time thriller, but an enjoyable race nonetheless. Harry, you were here for qualifying, obviously, yesterday. How did you find the weekend so far? How did you find the race?
I think we can safely say now we can have a battle at every circuit we go to, right?
Oh no, he said it.
I call it out now.
No. You've jinxed it.
I said I'd give it one more race, and I've given it one more race, and we've had another one. So
it's going to be 30 seconds next week. Oh, Harry.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Anyway, so I hope you all enjoyed that one, because that's the last enjoyable race we'll have this year now. Yeah, a pretty close battle. We're going to get on to the likes of Mercedes versus Ferrari, ultimately finishing where they started in third, fourth, fifth and sixth. Piastri and Perez having to fight their way back through the field. A bit on Alpine again, scoring points today. Aston Martin, though, no points for them. And, of course, our moment of the race will close out the show. But let's start with the battle out front. Max Verstappen, of course, after George Russell claimed a very early lead, was able to get by George Russell, build up a bit of a gap, and even with Lando Norris being able to catch him in that last stint, it wasn't enough in the end, but only by a couple of seconds. Sam, do you think that this race was won and lost on that opening lap, or even before we got to turn 1?
Tell you what, I just want to go into a little bit of praise for George Russ on that start, because does he indeed absolutely chucked it around the outside, and you heard them in the cool-down room actually going, Lando, I think, said to Max, I think we slowed each other down a bit much there, because George going clean around the outside of Ben, your favourite turn 1, delivered a sensational performance. And we pulled this up in the and Ben, more specifically, you pulled this up, I'll bring it to you in the preview episode where we spoke about race pace and whether we were able to, Mercedes were able to hang on with good race pace throughout the entire Grand Prix. And it evidently became clear that actually Max and Lando will probably have the legs on the Mercedes guys throughout the overall Grand Prix. But George Russell did exactly what he needed to do, which was make it difficult, at least for a little bit anyway. And sending it around the outside like that, I love it when a turn 1 opens up that opportunity. It's very similar to Mexico's turn 1 and 2 as well, in the sense that because of that running down to the braking zone is so long, 11 seconds is that run down from the start to the turn 1 braking zone. It allows for slipstream, it allows for late braking, which of course we love, hence the name. So big up George Russell, big up that turn 1. It was good fun to watch. But was it won and lost for Lando? Lando's start, initially, he got a good getaway and then obviously dropped the lead to Max almost immediately. And then strategy as well wasn't perfect, I think, for McLaren. They kept trying to go for tyre offset. And this just meant that because of the clean air that Verstappen was running in, even though he got caught towards the end, he had done so much throughout the Grand Prix where he was just able to extend a little bit, cruise, maintain his tyres, that even though Lando was really rapid towards the end of the Grand Prix, Max just had enough in the bag. He was never really under pressure, despite it coming down to under 3 seconds at the end there. He just got the job done throughout the Grand Prix. So I think the race was pretty much lost for Lando before the first set of pit stops had taken out. I don't think they were close enough come that first strategy call. And I was also very surprised that no one was starting on the mediums other than Albon, who came out the pit lane, of course, on mediums. I thought the soft tyres at the start of the Grand Prix with qualifying wore very quickly. It makes sense that they went on them at the end when the fuel was much lighter. I think the track had cooled slightly, but I was really surprised that no one went for a slightly the alternative strategy of starting on the mediums. But yeah, I think it was lost by the first pit stop for Lando. Unfortunately, he had so much time to gain back again by that point. It didn't feel really plausible.
Harry, I guess in a weird way, you could term this a positive for the F1 season, but Lando Norris was gutted with his second place finish, which in itself proves how far McLaren have come, that they would be disappointed by that sort of a result. A couple of years ago, of course, they would have bitten your hand off for something like that. What did you make of Lando Norris's effort at the start, and do you think that's where the race was won and lost?
Yeah, like you said, Sam, a dirty start from George Russell, and I really appreciated it. But I'm also a little bit annoyed because I think he ruined our battle for the lead at the end. Because I think that's where Karine Chandok on the Sky commentary was pointing this out. It's where that gap was. It was about 4 seconds with, what was it, 5 laps to go, 6 laps to go. That was the gap that he lost basically in that first stint stuck behind. This is Norris, sorry. He lost stuck behind Russell. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I think even if it's either they don't lose out to Russell, but also he doesn't lose out to Verstappen on that start. I think he needs one of those two not to happen, but he had both, unfortunately. So not only did he lose out to Verstappen, he lost out to Russell. I think if Russell still gets in front of the start and Norris is second, I think we've got a different race altogether. I think if Russell's not in the picture and Verstappen still gets past him, again, I still think we've got a different race on our hands. So yeah, it's a shame in that sense, but once again, a nice, very close, and a gap of 2 seconds. You guys thought it would be more than that. We're getting to bold predictions, but this is why I'm a bit more confident now about that. I think we can have some close races for the remainder of the season because this is now we're at a classic European track here. This is vintage European motor racing circuit. And we had another 2-second finish between Verstappen and Norris. So yeah, in that sense, it's a good sign for the remainder of the season. Obviously, Norris was gutted because he thought the win was on the cards, and he'd have to say it probably could have been had that start gone better. But hopefully, there's more of that to come.
Yeah, it was one of those where I think you could argue not only was this race won and lost on the opening lap, not even going into turn 1. I think you can look at the first 10 meters of that Grand Prix, and that's where it was lost because ultimately Lando Norris so nearly had the gap to Verstappen at the start to be able to cover him off on the outside, or what would become the inside of turn 1. If he was able to do that, then suddenly I think Verstappen is the driver in the middle of those 3 cars, and he's the one that's sandwiched into third place. And even if Russell still gets around the outside, at that point it's Lando Norris in second rather than Verstappen. And if Lando Norris can then make the move as Max Verstappen did very early on, and which ended up being such a crucial move that how quickly Verstappen got that done, then I think we are looking at a completely different race. Like you say, Karine Chandok was quick to mention how the gap in that first stint was ultimately what caused Verstappen to be able to win this race. I do just want to give a shout out to friend of the podcast, Karine Chandok. I thought he was excellent today. And I mean no disrespect to Martin Brundle, who's often the co-commentator, because he's brilliant in his own right. But having Karine Chandok there, who is way more on it strategically than anyone else I think they put in the booth, was really good, particularly for a race like this where there were so many 2 and 3 stop races. But yeah, go on.
Sorry, but I was going to say on that point, Karun called what was going to be an exciting end of the race, like halfway through the race, which I think is very useful for a viewer. At that point, you could easily switch off, but calling that was actually really useful for maybe someone slightly more casual. But yeah, agreed.
100%. In terms of the strategy that McLaren deployed, Harry, we saw Lando Norris go quite a bit longer on the first stint, trying to get that tyre offset to work for them. Did you agree with that call?
I did. I think because after he got stuck behind Russell for so long, they had to try something different with it. This race, and I guess a couple of others now, like Imola, are giving me real 2020 vibes. It's giving me Max Verstappen and Red Bull trying to beat Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes by doing something different, and it's not quite pulling off at the moment, but hopefully as we keep going on, we'll get a closer battle. I think they had to try something different as soon as that gap was pulled with Verstappen in that first stint. I think if they'd followed suit, they wouldn't have caught him anyway. So it probably didn't quite pay off with the traffic he had to get through, but it was worth a punt. And like we said, I think the time was really lost in that first stint anyway, rather than what he had to do in stint 2. So worth a shout from McLaren. They tried it. They've tried it before. It hasn't quite paid off. Obviously did in Miami. And again, if a safety car had come out here, then they could have looked like heroes again. No yellow flags, even when Alex Albon's just languishing in the gravel, by the way.
They were still scrambling to pick him up. Like, hang on, what colour was it? No, it was already
yellow.
He became the world's angriest man when he did that. He was fuming.
Why is my car done this? Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Don't talk to me.
I've asked you a question, but don't you dare talk to me.
Don't reply immediately. How dare you?
But yeah, so if a safety car come out for McLaren, then they could have looked like heroes, but wasn't to be. But I think overall it was worth a shout.
What do you think, Sam? Strategically, could McLaren have done anything different to try and take this win away from Verstappen, or did they do all they could?
I think with Norris's car, they did all they could. It was fine. It made sense. Norris was able to execute overtakes really, really well. He was rarely stuck behind anyone that was slower than him. What I wanted more involvement from was from Piastri, who was languishing. That first stint, Max Verstappen pits and comes out behind Oscar Piastri. And I said it on our live stream that we were doing. I said, right, Piastri now, defend like a lion. You've got to make sure that you get the elbows out and you hold up Max, even if it's for half a lap. It might bring back a second. Just be difficult. And Max literally whipped it round him so easily. It was like passing a back marker. I know the tyres were offset. I know that Max was on brand new rubber and Piastri would be running from the start of the Grand Prix on that set. But it's Catalonia. This isn't Monza. You can't just fly past anywhere you want. And we saw multiple drivers get stuck for half a lap or so behind drivers while having to make the overtake on the start-finish straight. And that could have been the difference maker. That could have restored the gap that got lost on the first few laps when Norris was stuck behind Russell. Piastri was never going to really make it back to the front. He was never going to be inside the top six, I don't think. That was evident when he was stuck behind Gasly for quite a while at the start of the Grand Prix. So you may as well let him go. Sacrifice him. Do it for the team. And tell him you need to make this as humanely difficult for Max Verstappen as possible because it could give us a chance to win here. Do you remember a little while ago when it was like, don't bring out a safety car? Do you remember that when Piastri got the call? That's what they needed there, almost the opposite. Do whatever you can. Get the car all over that racetrack. Make it so difficult. So it wasn't necessarily about the strategy of the pit stops, but I expected a bigger call to Piastri there to be like, our main competition is the guy right behind you. Get your elbows out. You need to make this hard and we might win this race. He didn't. He breezed right past him. I didn't hear any radio anyway. Maybe he did, but there was nothing from him and I was a bit disappointed.
We'll talk more on Piastri and his race a little bit later on in the show. I've got to be honest, I don't think there's much he could have done there, but we'll talk Piastri a little bit later on. In terms of strategically for Norris, could they have done anything different? I'm going to be a little bit critical of McLaren here, and I might be wrong in doing so. I'm happy to be corrected. I think they could have done something a little bit different. So I think they got like 80% of the way there in terms of the strategy I think they should have deployed, but they didn't do the last 20%. So what I think they should have done was almost what Leclerc did. So Leclerc obviously stayed out longer, as Norris did, but Leclerc stayed out a few laps longer than Norris did. I think they should have done that because Norris was able to dispose of traffic after his first stop, but actually he came out just behind all of the cars that he would need to overtake. It still slowed him down a bit, I think. If he goes and stays out a little bit longer, he obviously drops back even further from that group. That gives him the clean air that suddenly, by the time he's caught up to that group, they're probably already considering their second stop. So I think that might have just given him a little bit more clean air than the strategy they did deploy. And if he goes, say, 6-7 laps longer, I think you then start to get into the window of contemplating a one-stop. Now, I know no one tried it, but I think you've at least got the flexibility then at that point of saying, well, with 15 laps to go, we can make the judgment call at that time. Do we have enough tyre life to be able to hold off everyone else and potentially win? Or do we pit for soft tyres with 15 laps to go and then we've got slam dunk passes on cars around us rather than we're going to get it done, but it's going to take a little bit of work. I just think they should have extended that first stint a little bit longer than they did. I'm not sure whether it would have actually worked, but I think that might have just given them an option or two more than what they had available to them.
Were you shocked that no one tried the one stop?
I was a little bit shocked, yes. I think it would have been worth a go from someone, particularly we saw no retirements today, so I think those back, you've got the likes of 3 teams battling from 14th down. You're not going to score any points unless you try something radically different. So I think it would have been worth a go. The only issue was that hard tyre was not as good as it was expected to be. If it was as good as it was expected to be, then I think maybe it was worth a go. But yeah, I can understand why no one in the top 10 tried it. It's just if Norris extended a bit further, you've at least got the option to. Even if you then decide, actually, it still makes sense for us to go to a 2-stop and be very quick in that final stint, you can do that. But once you've picked that early, you kind of just take that away from yourself.
Yeah, I see your point. I think my only reservation about what you're saying there is I feel like Norris will need more laps to catch up to Verstappen. I don't think he needs less laps in that final stint. I think even if he had a bigger tyre advantage, I still don't think it's enough. I think the damage was done too early. I think we've all harked back to it that realistically you need some other kind of intervention to prevent Max Verstappen getting away further, or you needed a change right at the very start of the Grand Prix. I don't think 15 laps, 25 laps on the softs, whatever it might have been, would have been enough. I think Verstappen had the tyre life in the bag.
Should we review some highly successful bold predictions?
Oh, I can't wait. I love this part of the podcast.
Okay, so Harry, you predicted, if I remember correctly, that both Mercedes would be on the podium. You were 50% of the way there.
Well done, mate.
So close, but yet so far.
Were you just like hoping that in the dying stages, Norris and Verstappen were going to crash into each other, leading to a 1-2?
Yeah.
Just
Well,
saying,
I was hopeful. Anything would have done. I was hopeful after quali, I'll be real, but yeah, damn you, Norris and Verstappen, for being good.
That's the quote of the podcast already. Sam, you said that Verstappen would win by 10 seconds or more.
And at one point, the gap was 8 seconds. And I was thinking, yes, here we go. I'm going to be right. And I was very swiftly wrong. Ben, what did you say?
I said that Verstappen was going to win by 2.0 seconds. So I think I was right.
I think you've got the decimal in the wrong place there, mate.
No.
I don't know. Someone will have to watch it back because I don't quite remember. Maybe I accidentally misspoke and said 20 seconds, but...
yeah, I think 2-0 points is what I said.
You know what? I don't mind being wrong on that. It was a good race, and I'd rather be wrong for the fans.
No, we pulled this up. If you've heard that noise, it's because Harry is starting screen sharing something. What's this, Harry?
Sam said something on the live stream he was doing on Twitch. I'll just play it for you folks. Hang on.
Press. Oh dear, it's done. It's done. Whose bold prediction's going to be right? This guy's. Who's going to brag all over the podcast? This guy. Who's going to clip this bit if I get it wrong later on in the stream? You lot. So have...
You damn fool.
And, yeah, what are you saying that for on the internet?
Come on.
You know what? I live and die by the sword. I'm proud of myself. I gave it a good go.
You put the sword out for yourself.
That's fine, because if it worked, I could celebrate. It's fine. We go again.
Stabbed yourself.
Damn this sword.
I love the sword. Yeah, go. Good. Still wrong.
Great. So, highly successful week for our bold predictions. We'll, of course, be back with more bold predictions for the Austrian Grand Prix taking place next weekend. We'll take our first break of this episode. On the other side, we're going to be chatting about Mercedes and Ferrari. Okay, everyone, welcome back. The Mercedes and Ferraris, they qualified 3rd and 4th for the Mercedes and 5th and 6th for the Ferraris. That is exactly where they finished. We were asking Sam on the qualifying review whether, Ferrari would have the race pace to overhaul the Mercedes. The answer was no.
Yeah, I was quite surprised. And actually, during the race, I even said, oh, right, we're starting to see that race pace fall off. The Ferrari's race pace is improving. At that moment after the first pit stops where Russell's pit stop was a little bit slow and Sainz managed to jump Lewis Hamilton and he was right behind George Russell. I thought, here we go. This is going to be almost we get the changing of the guard in this Grand Prix where the Ferraris going to end up being in front. We've had a slight slip up of strategy from Mercedes. They'll start to run away with it a little bit. But very quickly, Russell trotting off down the road and Lewis Hamilton turned up again, despite being jumped. It's like, oh, hello there. It's me, Lewis Hamilton. I'm back. And he just kept coming back. Lewis Hamilton didn't want to go away. this Grand Prix, and I respect it because it like knock back. Oh, by the way, I'm beating you all again. Also, he came out after his race and in the interview, and he said hard tyres were never in play for me. It was always going to be a soft, medium, soft, which is interesting. Where George Russell obviously ended on the hard tyre.
He hates tyres, though, so this is not a surprise.
Yeah, it's like sabotage, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, literally. I'm sure that everyone is sat there thinking, dear God, it hasn't worked for him. Toto Wolff is trying to kill his career, or whatever email was apparently sent by a fan. Ridiculous. But yeah, so fair play to Mercedes. It looks like the developments they're making are finally working. As Spain merchants, they've done it once again.
No, not believing it.
Two podiums in a row. Two very different Grand Prix, different weathers, different types of tracks. So they are Spain merchants, and they do always go well here. And I would believe that they are still just Spain merchants if they hadn't also got a pole and a podium back at Canada as well. The gap is closing, I think. And I was quite impressed with both Hamilton and Russell. Moves were made. We said already how good Russell's start was. Hamilton was very consistent throughout the Grand Prix. He made a lot of good moves that were well-timed, concise, didn't get stuck behind people for too long. The only one I was a bit annoyed about was the second time he overtook Sainz. He was behind him for pretty much a whole lap, and I thought there were 2 or 3 occasions where, you know what, Hamilton of old would have sent that. He could have sent that down the inside and he could make it work. Didn't. Held on for a whole lap before he got the move done.
Was it worth it, though?
Oh, yeah. He got the same result. Right? Like, in hindsight, he got exactly the same end result. He wouldn't have got second had he overtaken Sainz half a lap beforehand. And he knows better than I do. Bloke's won over 100 races, so I'm sure he goes.
It's a close one.
But Sam said I should have done it half a lap before. I'm sure he's listening.
He sounds like Shrek earlier.
Great Lewis Hamilton impression. Excellent.
What does he sound like?
Hold on. But Sam said, man, I should have done it half a lap before.
I'm retiring.
How's that worse?
Good stuff. The many voices of Lewis Hamilton. He's got as many voices as he has race wings. My point here is, it was a very well-managed race, actually, I think, by Lewis Hamilton. I think Russell is maybe going to be kicking himself a little bit. So the fact that he was leading the Grand Prix over the first lap to finish behind his teammate again, even with the slight delayed pit stop, he managed to come out in front of him. So I was really surprised to see that Russell finished behind Lewis Hamilton, overtaking on pure pace. It wasn't Team August to let him through. He couldn't keep up with the hards. We know the hards didn't perform as well as they were expected to do, but I thought with the way they fell off, I thought Russell's hard tyres were going to be able to maybe regain a bit of pace before the end of the Grand Prix, but the gap just kept growing. And obviously Leclerc was right behind him before the end of the Grand Prix. So surprised Ferrari couldn't make the move earlier or at all. And I'm surprised that Russell didn't finish in front of Hamilton. I think this was a really good weekend for Lewis.
Harry, what do you think? Obviously, 3rd and 4th for the Mercedes, exactly the same as what they had in Canada. Were you impressed by the fact that they were clear of both Ferraris?
Yeah, look, I know I said they're Spain merchants, and there's 10% of me that still wants to wait until Austria before I say that Mercedes have made an actual improvement here. But yeah, it's encouraging for them because they were comfortably, apart from obviously Leclerc catching Russell at the end, but that was just down to tyre offset more than anything else. They were clear of Ferrari. I have a request for Lewis Hamilton. Couldn't he stop making his own life hard? Because he did all the hard, instead of ballsing up qualifying yesterday, he did all that hard work, got to P3. Do you start properly, my guy?
I mean, to be fair, his turn 1 was great, though.
His turn 1 was excellent, but he's had to make up for the fact that he didn't.
True.
I'm being harsh on him because he's Lewis Hamilton here. He's a 7-time world champion. But yeah, it just would have been interesting if he had his start gone better. He even said it in the cool-down room when he saw the move of George. He was like, that should have been me. I was like, yeah, it should have been. Do it next time.
It'd be funny if Verstappen or Norris had said that. Yeah, should have been you, to be honest.
Should have been you, really.
Should have been.
Come on, old man, what are you doing?
Did you hear him in the cool-down room?
Who, Hamilton?
Yeah. He said if I didn't get a rude word start, I probably would have been up there with you guys. And it's like, well, at least he's aware that it was bad.
But I think he had more pace than Russell, as evidenced by the fact that he did finish in front of him. But he just compromised his own race from there. So that's a bit disappointing. But I'm glad to see him on the podium for the first time this year, which is, I know they've only had 2 podiums now, but it's just madness, isn't it?
Racing 9, that's crazy.
You'd have said that 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah, anyway. But yeah, I think definitely more encouraging for Mercedes that they could clear Ferrari like this. Ferrari, again, I don't know whether it's better than Canada, but then anything was better than Canada. So that's not saying too much, but they were just visibly the third, fourth best team there. The McLarens, I think, were quicker. Obviously, Piastri didn't finish in front of them, but Ferrari they can't be too happy with where they've got to around Spain, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think they can. I said in the qualifying review yesterday how disappointed I was in Ferrari's pace, and I'm just as disappointed today. I really expected more from them. I know that they weren't overly optimistic about this circuit, but equally, they have been overhauled by Mercedes at the last 2 Grand Prix, and I think probably the worst thing for Ferrari is they didn't mess it up for themselves. Like, normally when they don't do very well, you can point to something that they've done which is a bit stupid. I don't think they did anything stupid today, apart from nearly killing each other early on.
Oh, come on. What are they doing?
I have no idea.
A kiss.
My guys, it's like lap 3. What are you doing? But yeah, I don't know. Carlos Sainz's strategy was essentially identical to George Russell's. There was barely anything in that. George Russell beat Carlos Sainz. And even with Charles Leclerc, who I think they nailed the strategy for Leclerc. They left him out really long on that first stint. It meant that on the second stint, he wasn't in any dirty air. He was just able to run at his pace. And it almost got him back to George Russell, obviously. I think they pretty much got what they deserved, which isn't good because they only got 5th and 6th. But that's where the pace of the car was. So I think they're going to be quite disappointed. From Mercedes' perspective, I think you're right. Lewis Hamilton will be disappointed by the start because he was good. He is just really quick around Spain. Like, just generally. I know a couple of years ago, do you remember when he had some sort of incident, maybe with Magnussen? I can't remember what happened, but he had an incident and was essentially at the back of the field and had to work his way back through. And he was seriously good. And he'll be annoyed, similar to Canada, that he wasn't in a better position to take advantage of it. Now, I still don't think he had the pace to catch the top 2, but he could have maybe made more of a fight of it. I don't even think George Russell would be that disappointed either, because he can point to the fact that he was on the significantly worse tyre, because that hard tyre, for whatever reason, just didn't really work for anyone who used it, and he was ahead of Hamilton when they were on the same tyre for the first half of that Grand Prix. So I think he can point to that and say, if it was the other way around and Hamilton had come on into the pits for hards and I'd seen how bad they were working and I'd gone on to softs, I'd have beaten him. I know it's if, buts and maybes, but I don't think he'll look at this and say, I was comprehensively beaten by Hamilton on the same strategy here. So, yeah, a good day for Mercedes, certainly working towards where they really should have been at the start of this year. But Ferrari, I am disappointed.
Speaking of Lewis Hamilton, I've just posted this in our WhatsApp group, which I'm sure you've all just seen. But this is a great story that's actually being tweeted live by Luke Smith. Luke Smith, obviously a big journalist. He said, Lewis Hamilton is first at the post-race press conference. He's put his glasses on and said, I'm going to take a nap. He's now promptly started to fall asleep on the sofa. And then he said, Hamilton then started playing Could You Be Loved aloud from his phone while waiting. Max Verstappen walked into him, still flat on his back, and Max said, he's clearly getting old. Do you need a massage? So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the post-race.
That's got so much meme potential.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
That is a meme.
It's like, I'm going to put music on my phone and I'm going to fall asleep. Thanks, guys.
So exhausted by this F1.
Oh, good.
I'm exhausted. Should we go through driver of the day?
Yeah, go
on. Hang on. I need to play it.
Well
go
done.
on, Ben.
I'm on it. I promise.
The verdict is in. You're the driver of the day. You're the driver of the day. You're good at driving.
Sam, who was your driver of the day?
Such a zesty little tune. My driver of the day is Pierre Gasly. Absolute
of course it is.
Boss man. The sausages are out. Teammate wars is in the bag. He held off Sergio Perez until quite literally the last lap, which I was raging. I was Bruno fuming on the screen. I was so annoyed that he got past before the very
I was
end.
annoyed we couldn't watch it.
I know. And someone even called it in the chat. They said, can't wait for us to cut away from that last lap overtake to watch Max Verstappen cross the line because we know he's already getting a wing. And that's literally what happened. Pierre Gasly was sensational all weekend. It's his best weekend so far this season. Drove brilliantly, qualified brilliantly, put up a great fight against the likes of Piastri and Perez. despite having an incredibly slow pit stop, still got back past his teammate and beat him comfortably. Well done to Alpine. Double points finish, and Gasly smashed it.
The popular vote went to Lando Norris, Harry, and obviously Sam's vote's gone to Gasly. Who's your vote going to?
That's really boring, but I'm going for Max Verstappen.
He did win the race, to be fair.
Won the race.
I get Norris, but also, do you start better, Lando? You might do better then. But I think Verstappen. I think the thing is because he's continuing basically winning from a position of dominance. It's not the position of dominance anymore. And if you look at where his teammate was, get on to him. He's outdriving that car. That Red Bull was not the fastest car today. I don't think it was. I think Lando in the McLaren was quicker, and he obviously got the better start. But also, and they mentioned it. GP mentions it before he gets past. But that overtake on Russell was critical for that race for him, because I think if he didn't get that done, then we had a very different outcome. So Max Verstappen for me, which I know is quite an obvious and popular driver that they vote, but I think he deserves it.
I saw quite an interesting quote on the Twitter earlier after the race that was, we're seeing here a very good driver in a great car and a great driver in a very good car, with no names. And I think it was quite clear who they were talking to in each reference. I think it describes it quite nicely.
Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. That's what it is.
Yeah,
obviously. Right. It's quite clear.
Oh, dear Williams. Driver of the day, I think Pierre Gasly is absolutely a fair shout. He would have been clear of the rest for me without a doubt if he held off Perez. The fact that Perez got by makes me at least consider a couple of other contenders, including Verstappen. I have to give a shout out to one other driver here who I thought had a very good race, and that is Zhou Guanyu. He was far better than he has been in a long time. He was a long way clear of his teammate. He beat one of the Aston Martins. He was way clear of the Williams and RB drivers. I thought that was one of his best races of the season so far. And actually, I think he is in this conversation as well. I will go for Max Verstappen because of the reasons that Harry said. The clinical move on Russell was highly impressive. And on a day where he didn't have the best pace in the world, he still managed to... He's just finding ways to win, isn't he? And that deserves a lot of credit.
Well done, Pierre Gasly. Driver of the day for all of us. Love that. Let's move on.
Good stuff.
Good. Worst driver of the day.
Get in the bin. Worst driver of the day. Bin. Worst driver of the day. You suck at driving.
Harry, who have you got?
Sergio Perez. Are people going to come after me again? Because I feel like I keep giving it to him, but he only just, as you just mentioned, he only just got past an Alpine. Okay, and your teammate, he won the race, my guy. You can't carry on doing that. That's not how this works. You can't win constructors' championships like that.
Maybe they will. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, they've come away today with 29 points as a result of Verstappen's win, and Perez's 8th place finish. Of course, McLaren didn't have the best day because Piastri was only 7th, so they've come away with 25 points. And then Mercedes on 27. So actually, it's fairly close between those three teams in terms of how many points they've scored today.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I just think on this, I know he had the penalty as well, but he didn't make any moves through the field, really. He made a couple. The last one was on the last lap. And again, I'd like to reiterate, I know they were better this weekend. It was against an Alpine.
It was. It was against the chunkiest of all the chunky boys.
Mr. Chunky has a car.
Yes.
No, because doesn't Ocon have the chunkiest of the chunky boys?
Oh, I don't know. It might be back to Gasly.
Yes, it's like putting a grain of rice on the bloody bonnet of the car. It's really making a difference.
Who was your worst driver of the day, Sam?
Sergio Perez is a fair shout. I do think he had the strategy from hell today. Soft, medium, and then pitted again, I think. Did Perez do a 3-stop? Or am I making up? Yeah. Bad. So bad. I'm going to have to give it to Logan Sargent. I'm sorry. Literally non-existent in the entire Grand Prix. Sergio Perez is a very good shout and up there as a contender for me, but to be 18 seconds behind everyone else, I know that there were some mitigating circumstances there, but he was never involved in anything ever. He may as well be driving around in like a Chrysler Voyager people carrier. He would achieve more because at least he's got more seats to help people out. He was atrocious. So he's by far the worst driver.
I'm going to give Logan Sargent a week off because even if he had a good day, he's not scoring points. I think Sergio Perez is a fair shout as well. I want to throw Kevin Magnussen in there as well. He was pretty anonymous, where his teammate was 11th and not far off points. He was down in 17th place and was there for most of the day. I'm going to agree with Mr. Harry Eid and go Sergio Perez. He was 8th and his teammate won the Grand Prix. Full stop.
Yeah, doesn't look good, does it? 2-year deal, though. 2-year deal.
Okay.
Time for Big Brain Strat.
Bob, we're gonna need you to box for wets. What? It's not even raining out. What are you talking about? Yeah, and Bob, if you get a chance, let your teammate pass you. What? He crashed out. He's not even in the race.
Love that. Harry, Big Brain Strat.
This doesn't really relate to actually strategy. Well, it does relate to strategy, but an actual strategy from a team here. If you're watching Sky, we had, as I already mentioned, Karun Chandok, David Croft, and Bernie Collins was on the team.
When she wasn't
they
choking.
were discussing when she wasn't choking at the end,
bless her.
and
She was
Crofty's just laughing.
No.
All right, Crofty, and then just threw it back to her again. She's still got a mouthful of water. Leave the woman alone. Anyway, but it was when the Big Brain Strat was around Lando Norris and could he extend to a one stop, and Bernie Collins is explaining, no, he'll extend and do a 2-stop here. He's not going to do a 1-stop. And then Crofty comes back and is like, but maybe he's extending to a 1-stop. And Bernie Collins comes back and goes, no, he's not doing that. Shut up, Crofty.
I'm actually a race strategist. No.
I'm like, stop. Yeah, exactly. Stop questioning the person who literally did this as a job for years. Goodness me, Crofty.
My Big Brain Strat is Charles Leclerc questioning why they are on plan A, because usually in a Grand Prix they've moved on from plan A by the first corner, but they were still on plan A quite late on in this Grand Prix, and Charles Leclerc was clearly agitated about it. But the craziest thing about this is Ferrari were actually right. They should have been on plan A because they managed to get him far closer to Russell than Sainz ever got. So Charles Leclerc questioned a strategy, which is obviously the default if you're a Ferrari driver, but on this occasion Ferrari seemed to have done all right with it. Sam?
You've nailed it, Ben. That was exactly my one. Was Charles being very annoyed at plan A, despite plan A being 100% correct. The other one is what I've already mentioned, which I think was Sergio Perez being on a 3-stop. It was just crap. So those are my 2. You got them.
We got him. Right, that will be our second break of this episode. On the other side, we're going to be chatting through the likes of Alpine, Aston Martin, Oscar Piastri, and Sergio Perez. Okay, everyone, welcome back. So Oscar Piastri and Sergio Perez qualified out of position. We had Sergio Perez starting in 11th place, Oscar Piastri starting in 9th. And the question, obviously, from yesterday was how much progress could they make throughout the field? The answer was Oscar Piastri finishing in 7th and Sergio Perez finishing in 8th. Sam, what did you make of both of their recovery drives?
Neither were particularly great. I was more frustrated with Perez than I was Piastri. I think Piastri was probably as high as he could feasibly get. I don't think, because he rubbished himself in qualifying through his own doing, he wasn't going to get any further than beating the Ferraris, the Mercedes, his teammate, or Max Verstappen. So once he got past the Alpines, eventually he got clear them. Although Gasly was a bit more pesky than I think they expected him to be, he basically did the rest that he could. Wasn't great though, and he put himself in the hole and he wasn't able to really dig out of it. I was expecting far more from Sergio Perez. The pace was bad in qualifying, but I thought through race pace, where tyres typically are going to get burnt up, this is a strength of Perez's, is making tyres work. He's able to go the distance. He's able to do something different from other people in a track that he's very comfortable with and historically has done okay at. I thought he would be able to do something a bit different, make it work, and at least beat Piastri. I thought he could have beaten Piastri, and I thought he might have been a bit of a weird outside chance of maybe catching up with a Ferrari, or whether the Mercedes had dropped back at that point might have done it. But the fact he was only just overtaking Alpines, coming in last, lap of the race. I was really quite disappointed. I thought he'd be well and truly ahead of that group. And he wasn't. I've just seen someone tweet a meme that the greatest battle of our time is Sergio Perez versus Stake Williams and Sauber, and Haas rather, which is savage, but actually incredibly true right now. So I was really disappointed with what Perez was able to achieve. Piastri ruined his day on Saturday, but I expected more from Perez in that car.
How are your thoughts on those two drivers?
Yeah, I think they both obviously undid their weekend slightly with Saturday. Perez, as you say, Sam, was the more disappointing of the two. I think Piastri probably did get as far as he could, but Perez should be further up with the car. I know that's not a dominant car anymore, but fighting nabbing an extra place off an Alpine on the last lap, as I've already mentioned, isn't good enough for him. So it wasn't the best weekends for either of them. As you say, as you already mentioned, Ben, I know I said about Perez, they're not going to win a championship like that, but Piastri can afford to, if McLaren want to challenge as well, Piastri can afford to have more weekends like that also. So disappointing. Again, on the whole, you'd have to be more disappointed in Perez and Piastri given experience, car they've got, etc. But yeah, not great for either of them.
Yeah, I think they both achieved what I thought they were going to achieve. With Oscar Piastri, I said it in the qualifying review yesterday, I felt that there was going to be a lot of missed points from him this weekend because of his qualifying effort, and ultimately that came true. He might well have had the pace to mix it with the Ferrari and the Mercedes drivers if he had started in and around where they qualified. He didn't, and as a result of that, he, much like his teammate, to be honest, was stuck in that first stint, and it wasn't until the later stints where we get some difference in strategy that he was able to make some progress. So yeah, I think Piastri did everything he could on the day, but really his weekend was ruined yesterday. And you're absolutely right. If they want to compete, particularly with Ferrari, who of course I think at the moment there is a realistic chance that the Ferrari versus McLaren battle in the Constructors' Championship is going to be decided by whether Oscar Piastri can get much closer to Lando Norris than he is at the moment. From Sergio Perez's perspective, I can't even really say I'm disappointed, because that is exactly what I thought he was going to do, is to get back to about 8th place. I didn't think he'd have the pace to beat Piastri. I didn't think he'd have the pace to beat the Mercedes or Ferrari drivers. And I know his qualifying pace has come under scrutiny. I mean, last season as well, really, but this season is in addition to that. But his race pace that he demonstrated in practice sessions was no better than what we saw out there today. He was barely quicker than the Haas drivers in practice on those long runs. And that's what we had today. He was barely quicker than Nico Hülkenberg. He was barely quicker than the Alpines. I can't remember what the exact gap was between Piastri and Perez at the end as well, but it wasn't close. Perez was quite comfortably behind Piastri. So, like I say, at this point, if his race pace was better in the practice sessions and he wasn't able to capitalise on that in the Grand Prix, then I would have been disappointed. I'm not disappointed because that was his pace.
It's quite damning.
It's damning, yeah.
The three of us on this show are expecting nothing more from him at this point. And Ben, you brought it up before we start recording. And obviously, we haven't seen the clip, but you said that Christian Horner has apparently said that he hopes that he's gained confidence by overtaking Gasly at the end of that Grand Prix. If that's a real quote from Christian Horner, that's like, me being told, well, I hope you've gained confidence that you can lose weight by eating a banana and not a chicken nugget. You think, well, it's the bare minimum.
The freaking irony of overtaking Pierre Gasly, a man who was dumped from Red Bull.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Who was beating you in a car far worse for 99% of this Grand Prix. A car that was, at the start of this season, last. This guy's awful. 2-year deal. I'll say it again. 2-year deal. I'm baffled. I love Sergio. The decision just becomes more and more baffling.
It goes back to what really you said, Harry, about how you appreciate that the Red Bull car isn't as dominant as it was at the beginning of this season, but that's kind of the point, isn't it? It's you can't guarantee that your car is always going to be dominant as it was at the beginning of this year. And when it gets tougher, when the competitors around you, like McLaren and Ferrari, are starting to step up and really give you a headache on race day, you need two drivers in the fight who are going to be able to, more often than not, see them off. And at the moment, the team is so reliant on Verstappen outdriving that car, and Perez is underdriving the car. Should we move on to a couple of other teams? So Alpine managed to score points at the Canadian Grand Prix, which was a surprise. And then they thought, oh yeah, we'll score points again at the Spanish Grand Prix. Both of them scored points. Yeah, Gasly finishing 9th for 2 points. Esteban Ocon finishing 10th for 1 point. Harry, that was expected, right?
I'd tell you what, they should not change this driver lineup for 2025.
You know what?
It works well for them, right?
Both got Q3, both scored points. It's a tasty little lineup they've got there.
Yeah, do you know what? They've had a lot of problems, Alpine, but I'd keep that driver lineup exactly as it is.
Doing and Zhou next year are going to cook.
Goodness me. Yeah, I mean, this again. I don't want to be the same caught by the same trick as Mercedes have pulled in the past couple of years, but this is encouraging for Alpine because they're backing up a good result with another good result, and in totally different conditions around a totally different track, which is encouraging to say the least. So, yeah, it's been a tough year for them. That's probably understatement of the century. But finally, maybe it's starting to turn around. I mean, the complete. I know we're not in a pimp my ride livery season here, but the lack of any color on that car now is.
It should be deducted all of its points just for that.
Agreed.
There is no livery to it whatsoever, and I feel like they've taken more off this weekend because they had added a bit more blue back on, but no.
Ocon's out there running. No pedals.
Taking his shoes off.
Yeah. I don't need a helmet. But anyway, it seems to be working whatever they're doing, the improvements they make to that car, and that can only be, for a team that's had a lot going on lately, and been through the ringer a bit. It's going to boost morale if nothing else, and obviously get some points on the board. So, and to finish in front of both Aston Martins, which is given where they were at the start of the season, is actually very encouraging.
You think 6th in the championship is achievable with how poor RB were today?
I'm not sure I'm buying the RB. I'm thinking that's something track specific because, I mean, if I was Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo, I'd ask to have those upgrades taken off my car immediately. I don't want them. This is way worse.
You know the scene of Swanson, whatever his name, with the PC over his head and Parks are actually thrown straight in the bin. That's Yuki Tsunoda.
I want that.
Just the car.
Get rid of
in
this.
The bin.
Also, just a shout out to Daniel Ricciardo. Can he have better races when the car's good? Because he was
all right,
well clear of Yuki Tsunoda.
No, he can only score. He can only score better than Yuki when no points are on the table.
When there's nothing to play for, yeah. I'd hazard a guess that this was just an anomaly for RB because I don't believe that car's suddenly the second slowest or something. So it could be doable for Alpine, but I would suspect it's going to be a bit more of a fight, not like it was today.
What do you think, Sam? What do you think of the performance of the Alpine drivers today? And also, same question, could at least 6th in the championship be doable, the 7th at the moment?
Alpine have been the laughing stock of the season, for us especially, right? They've appeared on every single episode, it feels like, both Patreon and normal, and we have laughed audibly at them. And
they keep you sane.
It really does. It's a little bit of laughter in my life, keeps me happy, keeps me smiling. I go, oh, I've had a bad day today, but I'm not an Alpine. But the strange thing is, they were terrible at the start of the season. First couple of races, really, really rubbish. And yet, they've made this small but concise progress in every single Grand Prix. Miami, both cars were fighting just outside the points, right towards the end of the race. Monaco, both drivers right on the cusp. Of course, that's why Ocon's been dropped because he did that silly dive bomb. But Gasly scores points. Canada, points again. Spain, comfortable points, right? The fact that realistically, it was half a lap away from being an 8th place finish on merit really tells you that someone in that team knows what they're talking about. Someone in that team understands.
Must be me.
Where
I'm the only one here.
You. I refuse.
I'm literally the only one here. It must be me.
Let Ben cook.
Ben cook. And finally, he's listened to himself. Finally, Ben, you were the only one at the start of the season. But someone is talking sense in that team, and we need to give them credit. I would like whoever it is known publicly because they started the season appallingly, but they are making slow and progressive progress throughout this season so far. Do I think that 6th place is on the cards? It depends how consistent these poor upgrades are, right? Because we saw it with Ferrari. Ferrari brought upgrades to Canada. The car specifically didn't work in Canada. They were both outside the points. We come to Barcelona, sorry. And whilst they've fallen behind Mercedes here, the Spain merchants, they were much faster than they were in the previous race. Not the perfect result they wanted, but well inside the points again. If RB follow that exact trend where they need a bit of time to get used to the upgrades, the car specifically doesn't work here at Spain for some reason, they've got to make a couple of tweaks and it'll work again. Tsunoda and Ricciardo can very easily replicate what Alpine did today and boot Alpine straight out of the points. And I think they've had a good enough head start that 6th place is going to be very difficult for Alpine to achieve. Not impossible, because if they continue to make this progress throughout the whole season, 6th is achievable. I think it's still an outside shot. I think RB is still comfortably the favourites, but I don't think it's impossible. The lineup they've got is so good that I think they will surely put up a good fight throughout the season because they're together as a team, really cohesive.
I think 6th is achievable for Alpine, just because back there in the championship, it only takes 1 or 2 good results to really flip everything. So I think it is I'm not saying it's a likelihood, but I think it is possible for Alpine, at least based on the last couple of Grand Prix. Gasly was, as we've already mentioned, as in the driver of the day discussion, Gasly was very impressive today. And what he will take most encouragement from is the fact that he wasn't that far off in qualifying. We spoke about how good he was in qualifying, but actually the margin he had to the leaders in qualifying was basically the same in the race. Now, of course, it's extended out much further because we didn't have a safety car, we didn't have any yellow flags, no VSC, and it's over 60, however many laps the Grand Prix was. You're obviously going to have that margin increase lap over lap, but actually per lap, they were still pretty good. So I think race pace-wise, they're similar to where their qualifying pace was yesterday. Ocon struggled a little bit more than Gasly. He seemed to struggle with tyre wear a little bit more, I think. Nico Hülkenberg wasn't too far away from overtaking him. But even so, Ocon had a fine race as well. But yeah, I think they've got something to work with for the rest of this season, at least based on where they were at the beginning of the season. It's all relative because if you turned around at, last October and said, okay, Spanish Grand Prix next year, you're going to be 9th and 10th, they'd have gone, oh, all right, fine. That's probably
standard for us.
That might be a bad race for us. Yeah, not quite. But yeah, I think it's an encouraging race for them. Less of an encouraging race for Aston Martin because both Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll finished outside the points. They finished 12th and 14th today, Sam. It's not going very well for them at the moment.
Yeah, Lance Stroll didn't move from qualifying, basically, finished exactly where he qualified. And, Alonso got a little boost because he technically starting in front of Perez after that penalty was applied, starting in 10th place and then dropped back to 12th, finishing behind both Alpines, finishing behind Hülkenberg, even with a penalty applied. And he wasn't close to Hülkenberg at all. I think before the penalty was applied, there was about a 16-second gap between Alonso and Hülkenberg, which is sizable. For Nico Hülkenberg in a Haas to be 16 seconds clear of Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin, if you had said that at Zandvoort last year, if you had said to Alonso, next year in Spain, you'll be 16 seconds behind Nico Hülkenberg in a Haas, he will lose his mind. I think 12th being probably the best it could get for that car. I don't think they know what's going on. I do not think they understand the journey of what's happening with that car. We've joked about it with Mercedes. Do they understand the development? Do they know where they're going with the upgrades? Aston Martin are the embodiment of that. And I think Williams are going through a similar journey. I don't think they have a clear understanding of where the improvements of the car are needed and what's holding them back. Because 12th and 14th, it's a real struggle at a track that I think feasibly they should be quite good at. The engine was clearly got a problem here, so you can't be blaming it on that either. This was a struggle city for Aston Martin. They need something to turn them around before the summer break. Otherwise, this is going to be a really tough year for them. And I think they'll be praying for the new regulations sooner rather than later.
Harry, we saw at the beginning of the season that Mercedes and Aston Martin, not too much to separate them, particularly Alonso, obviously, versus the Mercedes. They're not very close now.
They are not very close now. The only, I think, saving graces for them are They didn't bring any upgrades for this weekend. I know not everyone did either, but they
You could tell.
They've not. You could tell on that one. The other thing is they were pants here last year as well. So
we're sorry.
Grow up, Sam. So, but I think that could be said. Can't hold that against them, but it was not a good weekend for them. And as you say, looking where they were versus Mercedes at the start of the year, it's with Mercedes third and fourth, and then not even in the top 10, and not even close to the top 10, as you said. It's not a great weekend for them. I don't think this track suits whatever the direction of their car is.
It didn't last year either, did it?
No, exactly. They were not good here last year, even when the car was in a could get podium. So that, I think they'll take that away as a not positive, but something to as an excuse, I guess, in that sense. But you'd have to say other tracks will be better, like potentially Austria. But yeah, not great for them. They seem to think they know. I know we've heard this from Mercedes before. They seem to think they know what the issues are, but it's not looking massively great for them at the moment.
Yeah, 12 months is a long old time in F1, and it's a massively different picture to what we had this time last year. Fernando Alonso, he had a really tough start. Obviously, he made an error early on in the Grand Prix as well. But I think at that point, there was a question of, is something wrong with Alonso's car? Is it? No, that's his pace. And see, he worked his way back a little bit because he was at one point behind Lance Stroll, and he ended up quite comfortably clear of Lance Stroll. So obviously Alonso improved as the race went on, but not really anywhere near enough to threaten the 11 drivers in front of him. And we know Alonso, he's quite good at the F1. So if he's languishing down in 12th, it probably means that's all the car has. Oh dear. We'll take our final break. We've got some moment of the race submissions on the other side. Okay, welcome back. Final segment on today's review episode is, of course, moment of the race, and we've got some Discord submissions that we will bring you very shortly. But before we get there, we each give our own moment of the race, and Sam, we'll start with you.
Thank God, I'm going to pick the obvious one. George Russell, Lando Norris, insane battle, wheel to wheel for essentially half a lap. It was so good. It was such a clean battle. I was going mad about it. Loved every second. That was by far the best moment of the race. I'm glad I got to choose it. Have fun, everyone else picking something else.
Just to speak about the battle for a second, that's what we love to see in F1. We get enough.
What it's about.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
We get a good amount of overtakes per race now in F1, but it's the real quality overtakes that make a Grand Prix or not, and that sort of thing. If we can have more of that.
Go on, Harry.
I was just going to say, sorry, a lot of the time in F1 now is tyre management. A lot of the time, most of the race, you're just managing your tyres. If the car behind is quicker, you just see them let them through. So thank you, George Russell, for not being that person. And he put up an actual fight. And I know I'm not calling out everyone else here and saying they don't put up fights, but more often than not, it's not worth your overall race time to battle. And I appreciate and respect George Russell for not bothering with race time and just going out for a good old scrap. Good old-fashioned British scrap.
Yeah, it was. It was like going down bloody Toby Carvery and having yourself a real old scrap for dinner, wasn't it? Put it all on your plate. Yeah, I thought it was absolutely sensational. I had a little moan, actually, about some of the DRS passes that we were seeing. Some people were halfway down the start-finish straight and they were passed, and there was no fight going to the braking zone. And it is boring. A DRS pass is so dull. So that was great to see.
I can't obviously go through a Spanish review without saying something about this as well.
Oh, God.
It all started at turn 1. If turn 1 was a slam dunk pass, we wouldn't have had any of that battle that followed it. But because you can take multiple lines through turns 1, 2, and 3, we got a good battle that lasted nearly half a lap.
I reckon we should rename turn 1 Hocking Corner.
Ooh, nice. Name it that just before it leaves the F1 calendar.
Literally, they'll announce it leaving a minute after we rename it Hocking Corner.
Absolutely. Your moment of the race, Harry.
I was going to go for that, but my other moment of the race was Trent Alexander-Arnold not getting the right rear off Gasly's car, because
that was just banter. We just wanted to give him something to do to get back ahead of Ocon again.
Because maybe without that he would have beaten Perez. Anyway, no, it just made me laugh at all the problems Alpine has, and then they can't get a tire on, or is it tire on? I can't remember, but yeah, that made me laugh. But yeah, my real moment is that battle / George Russell's dirty start.
Yeah, I was considering going for the Alpine pit stop, but not just the Gasly pit stop, because I audibly went, dear God, when they did a 2.1 second pit stop for Esteban Ocon, like 2 minutes before that. I was like, damn, oh, no, that Gasly one was like 7 seconds, back to normal. Okay. They used up all of the, we used all the people on the first stop and we forgot we had to go back out for a second one. I mean, I've drawn the short straw. I haven't even drawn the short. I've just given myself the short straw by going last here. I will go with the George Russell start, because it is not very often we get a driver come from 4th on the grid to lead into turn 1. There's only a couple of circuits on the calendar which even give the opportunity for doing so. And hey, we go years after it happened, we go mental about what Alonso did going into turn 1.
I was about to say that.
One of the best
This deserves the same thing.
Yeah.
It was from the same position, right? Alonso was 4th in that 2011 race. So hang on. Yeah, very valid.
We do, of course, have some submissions from our Discord. Thank you very much to everyone who did put a submission in. We had loads, so thank you so much. And that does obviously mean that we can only play some of them. So don't be too disheartened if yours doesn't make it today. There's every chance that it will get there. Next time, we'll be back for more Discord submissions in our preview of the Austrian Grand Prix on Wednesday. I'll hand it over to Mr. Harry Eid, who has control.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. First up, we have... Please hold. Just scrolling down. First up, we have Faster Than Yo Mama.
Best name.
Hey, y'all. My moment of the race was George coming out of nowhere on turn 1. Like Max and Lando were just sitting still. That was kind of wild. Good start to the race. Really supports Ben's theory of the Barcelona turn 1. Also, worst driver of the day, definitely Perez. It took him until like the last second of the last lap to pass Gasly. That was ridiculous. Keep breaking late, y'all.
Can we just quickly draw attention to what the file name on that one was as well?
God expects the British Inquisition. Brilliant.
Goodness me.
Great
Excellent
stuff.
work. Next up we have is Joy.
There was a graphic that came up about 10 to 15 laps to go saying that Lewis was simulated to be in 4th place at the end of the race. I'm assuming it's because George was on hard tires and Lewis was on softs, and George was still 4 seconds behind him by the end of the race, so I really appreciate the false hope there, F1. Also, if you enjoy LB, I highly suggest watching Sam's Twitch streams. They're very, very entertaining, and I look forward to more.
Big up.
Thank you, Joy. Had some of Joy's chocolates the other day, by the way. Sensational as always.
Me too.
Yeah.
They are delightful.
They are delightful. I
We
do have
all
to
love
say,
Joy's chocolates.
Right.
just on the graphic, I want to make sure I got this right. They were saying that he would have been 4th if he stopped for hard tyres, right?
Well, that's the problem. AWS brag about these graphics. That's not clear, is it? Clearly.
But it said on the graphic, didn't it? That if he's pitted for hard tyres on lap 35, whatever it was, then they projected he'd have been 4th rather than 3rd, which I've quite liked.
Sure. Good stuff.
I didn't pay attention to that bit, but sure.
Harry was asleep.
Also wasn't actually watching that bit.
Next up is Fry Up the Sausages, Barry.
Hey everyone, Fry Up the Sausages, Barry here from Perth, Australia. Gotta be, the race was there, it was alright, but it gotta be Flavio Briatore right at the start. That man was an absolute mess, and the fact that he's going to be making any decisions for Team Alpine, ooh, buddy, strap in.
No, Flavio. Mark retired 10 years ago. We can't have Webber.
To just defend Flavio Briatore, and I don't want to defend him very often, but the man did have some pretty serious heart surgery recently, so I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. But
Was that through the shock of being allowed back on the grid?
Not that convincing. Next up, we have Norm from Texas. Sorry, Norm. Goodness me. Norm from Texas.
Oh, hello, my late-breaking friends from across Lay Big Wet. It is I, Norm from Texas, and I am here to give my moment of the race, and my moment of the race was finding out that Logan Sargent does not have 2 wolves in him, and apparently one of those wolves got replaced with the turtle, because, good Lord, how do you be 18 seconds slower than everyone else? Anyway, keep breaking late.
Do you have 2 wolves in you?
I have 3. I stole one of Logan's.
That makes sense. Oh,
Got it.
So Shakira.
Thank you, Shakira. Next up is Tim.
Hi lads, Tim here. Long time, first time. Moment of the race is that dirty 1.8 second pit stop from the Red Bull boys. Difference between Lando's pit stops times stationary and Max's was over 2 seconds today, and that's what won Max the race.
That's
Enjoy
a
the
great
pod.
shout, Tim. Tim, that is actual analytics that we've got there. Brilliant.
That's so rare.
We don't do that.
But well done.
Yeah, wow. First time, long time. Enjoy that a lot. Next up is Lance.
Hello, fellow late breakers. This is Lance, friend of the podcast in training, aka Better Than Stroll, with my Spain moment of the race. Moment of the race would be, well, I'll give an honorable mention to that pass by George on the first lap, because the moment of the race for me was Alpine getting 9th and 10th. After I put team principal Hawking under pressure, he said, let him cook. I let him cook. Double points finish. Look at that. I apologize, Ben. I was not familiar with your game.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate that.
Speaking of cooking, fry up the sausages, Barry's back again.
Part 2?
Oh, wait. New moment of the race. The guy trying to give the wrong trophy into Hamilton and him having 5,000 podiums telling him, nah, that one actually goes to the other guy. Thanks, though.
Forgot about that. That's a good shout, that one.
Oh, no. Seb is next.
Hello, my moments of the race are going to be quick fire rounds, baby. Flavio at the start saying he's going to do what he can to get up in the front. You did it last time, mate. You lost your job. Norris bottling the start. Long's 11 seconds. Yep, it was, mate. Sainz crying. Yep, that a lot, mate. Leclerc and Sainz hitting each other. Sainz crying again. Yep, that happened. Norris and Russell doing the Pride of Britain and going around and not touching each other. Yeah, I wouldn't want to touch George either.
Carol Vorderman there giving him an award. Like, what?
Goodness me. Pride of Britain, that is
One
niche.
BQT for that.
Can we get more of Seb giving 30-second race reviews?
30 race recap. 30
I like
second
that.
recap.
Yeah, love that. And finally, last but not least, is Pierre Pasley.
My moment of the race was Alexander Albon sounding like my mom after I cleaned my room.
Okay, sure.
I don't want to hear it.
What a wild ride that was through the land of submissions. And as mentioned, we'll be back for under pressure submissions midweek ahead of the Austrian Grand Prix. And we'll be back for moment of the race in 1 week's time. Sam, if you wouldn't mind getting us out of here.
Folks, the next bit of content we'll be making will be the power rankings over on Patreon. So if you haven't caught up with them, everything's available to you. Even if you subscribe right now, go back and get all the great content. We're also going to be doing the historic race review this week as well. We're looking at Britain 08, a really good Grand Prix. So, go and watch it. Make sure you dissect it yourself, and we'll be reviewing that as well. Join us midweek for the Austria preview. Make sure that you're tuned in over the weekend, of course, because we'll be doing content all over the weekend as well. Thanks so much for your support. In the meantime, I've been Samuel Sage.
I've been Ben Hocking.
And I've been Harry Eade.
And remember, keep breaking late.